Hey everyone, I never thought I'd be whispering this into the dark like this, but here I am, heart hammering as I type with trembling fingers at 2 a.m. On the day I married the man I thought was perfect, I realized I'd actually married someone even more perfect for me in ways I could never admit out loud. Before him, my days blurred into this quiet kind of emptiness, waking up alone in my little apartment, the sheets still cool on the other side, scrolling through dating apps that promised everything and delivered nothing but shallow chats and awkward coffees. Love felt like a distant echo, always just out of reach, leaving me with this hollow ache that no amount of wine nights with friends could fill. Then my best friend pulled me into her chaotic family barbecue one sticky summer afternoon. The air smelled of charcoal and fresh-cut grass, laughter bouncing off the wooden fence. That's when I met Alex, her older brother, our eyes locked across the grill, smoke curling between us like a secret already forming. He smiled, polite and easy, but his gaze lingered just a second too long on the thin straps of my sundress, tracing the line of my shoulder before flicking away. Heat flooded my cheeks, and I turned fast, pretending to fuss with a plate of burgers, my pulse suddenly loud in my ears. It was nothing, just a glance, but it left this strange electricity humming under my skin, forbidden and warm, like I'd brushed against something I wasn't supposed to want. Over the next few months, he started appearing in my life like he belonged there, slipping into the spaces my best friend left open without meaning to. He'd show up to help her move that heavy couch, his shirt stretching tight across his shoulders as he lifted it effortlessly, muscles shifting under the fabric in a way that made my mouth go dry. At group dinners, he'd slide into the seat across from me, his laugh low and rumbling, the warm woody scent of his cologne drifting over when he leaned in to pass the salt. Once, when she mentioned my leaky faucet, he texted me directly, "I can fix that if you're free Saturday." I told myself it was just neighborly, just family, but when he knelt in my tiny kitchen, tools scattered around, his presence filling the room, I caught myself staring at the way his hands worked, steady and sure. The air between us felt thicker each time, charged with all the things we didn't say. I'd offer him water, our fingers nearly brushing as I handed over the glass, heart stumbling over itself. "Thanks," he'd murmur, voice rough like gravel under tires, and that single word would echo in my head for hours after he left, his scent clinging faintly to the couch cushions. I started noticing everything, the faint stubble along his jaw when he hadn't shaved, the heat radiating from him when he stood close to explain some wiring. It was innocent. It had to be. He was my best friend's brother, practically off limits, the kind of man who made ordinary days feel dangerously alive. Yet every encounter left me restless, lying awake later with the fan whirring softly overhead, replaying the almost touch of his arm against mine. Why did his nearness make the room feel smaller, warmer? I hated how my body betrayed me with these tiny shivers, this quiet craving I couldn't name. He wasn't even trying. Or was he? That polite smile of his, the way his eyes would find mine across the table and hold for a beat too long before someone else spoke. It pulled at me like gravity, slow and inevitable. I told myself to stop, to focus on anything else, but the ache only deepened, sweet and terrifying, whispering that maybe this was more than friendly help. And then one evening, after he'd fixed the last loose hinge on my door, he paused in the hallway, keys in hand, the fading light catching the line of his neck. "You know," he said softly, "if you ever need anything, I'm just a call away." His breath carried that woody warmth again, close enough that I forgot how to answer for a second. Our eyes met, and the silence stretched, heavy with everything unsaid. My hand hovered near the doorframe, inches from where his rested, the air between us humming like a storm about to break. I'd lie awake long after he'd gone, the sheets dangled around my legs, staring at the ceiling as if it held answers. His brother. No, my best friend's brother. The words looped in my mind like a warning I kept ignoring. Every accidental brush of his hand from earlier visits replayed in slow motion, the warmth lingering on my skin hours later. "This is wrong," it whispered to the dark, pulling the pillow over my face, a Chi-S practically family. Yet my body betrayed me with that quiet ache, that pull like ardent shake. I started choosing the soft silk blouse Chi-D once noticed at a barbecue, the one that slipped just slightly off one shoulder. I'd tell myself it was nothing, just wanting to feel seen. But deep down I knew I was hoping his eyes would catch again, hold a second longer. One look would lend her anyone. The obsession crept in like fog, thickening with each passing week. I'd catch myself lingering by the window when I knew he might stop by, heart skipping at the sound of tires on gravel. In the mirror arida just the fabric, feeling foolish and alive all at once, shame twisting with something sweeter, hotter. My mind split right down the middle. Stop this now, it's dangerous, but what if his gaze meant the same quiet storm I felt? I hated how my thoughts circled him, how ordinary moments felt charged because of him. He wasn't even mine to want. Then came that stormy night when everything tilted. My best friend had cancelled our usual plans last minute, leaving me alone with the rain hammering the roof and the persistent leak dripping into a bucket in the corner. I opened the door to Alex. Soaked through, toolbox in hand, water streaming from his hair. Heard about the ceiling, he said simply, voice low over the wind. Cal didn't let you deal with it alone. I let him in. The air suddenly too small for both of us. We ended up sharing a bottle of red wine at the kitchen table as lightning flashed outside, thunder rolling like distant warnings. The power flickered once, twice, then died, plunging us into candlelight that danced across his face, softening the strong lines of his jaw. His fingers grazed mine when he passed me another glass. Just an accident, skin for a heartbeat. But the tension snapped like a live wire. I leaned in before I could think, my lips finding his in the dim glow. The taste of wine lingered between us, warm and heady, mixed with the faint scratch of stubble against my cheek. His breath hitched warm and close, sending a shiver racing down my spine. For one suspended moment, the storm outside matched the one inside me. Everything it fought, everything it craved, crashing together. That kiss deepened without permission, his strong hands sliding under the edge of my shirt, the heat of his body pressing me gently back against the kitchen counter. Rain lashed the windows in rhythm with our hurried breaths, the world narrowed to the space between us. Every moral voice in my head, but she's off limits, this will break everything, went silent, drowned out by the overwhelming pull. I gave in completely, surrender tasting like wine and rain and forbidden closeness. His touch felt like gravity finally winning, drawing me under in waves of warmth and trembling mead. No pretending this was still innocent. The ache it carried bloomed into something undeniable, terrifying in its rightness. My fingers curled into his damp shirt, holding on as if letting go would shatter me. What had I done? What were we doing? Yet the question dissolved against the solid warmth of him. The way his presence filled every empty corner of the room and my thoughts. The candles flickered lower, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets we could never take back. The days blurred into a year of stolen breaths and careful silences. We kept it all buried deep. Afternoons in my apartment where the blinds stayed drawn against prying eyes, his hand resting so close to mine on the couch that the heat from his palm made my skin prickle without ever quite closing the gap. Late-night texts that lit up my phone like forbidden fireflies, words that made my pulse stumble just reading them, and those nights, God, those nights when Chidi arrived after everyone else slept, pulling me close until the world narrowed to the steady rhythm of his breathing against my hair. The secrecy wrapped around us like smoke, sharp and thrilling, turning every glance into a risk that left me breathless. He had this way of lingering afterward, his fingers tracing slow circles on my back while he hummed that old song we both loved, the one that always felt like it was written for moments no one else could know. In those quiet minutes I felt truly seen. Not just wanted, but known in a way that made my chest ache with something dangerously close to peace. His gentle aftercare became my secret addiction. The way Chidi eat up the blanket higher, press a kiss to my temple, and whisper my name like it was the only word that mattered. Yet every time my best friend called, bubbling over about how happy she was that I was seeing her perfect brother, the guilt sliced through me fresh. It forced a laugh, nodding along as she praised his kindness, his steadiness, all while my mind screamed in silent panic. If only you knew how this began, how I crossed every line for the pull of him. Am I tearing apart the one family tie that always held me steady, all for this craving that won't let go, The question haunted my showers, my drives, my empty evenings, but then he'd text again, and the hesitation would melt under the gravity of missing him. I rationalized it in 1,000 small ways. We weren't hurting anyone as long as it stayed hidden. His touch felt like coming home after years of wandering. The way his presence filled the hollow spaces inside me kept dragging me deeper, no matter how hard I tried to swim against it. Still, the moral war raged on quieter nights, leaving me staring at the ceiling, heart hammering with the weight of what we were building on such fragile ground. Stop this before it consumes everything, my conscience whispered, but the memory of his warmth, the low timbre of his voice saying my name, always won. The pressure built slowly at first, then crashed over me without warning. Alex proposed at that surprise family dinner, dropping to one knee right there in front of both our families, the ring catching the soft light as everyone gasped and cheered. My best friend hugged me tight, tears shining in her eyes, whispering how she'd always hoped for this, how perfect we were together. I smiled through the whirlwind, cheeks warm, but inside the secret felt like stones piling on my chest, each one heavier than the last. The ring sat cool and heavy on my finger that night, a beautiful lie that made my stomach twist. Alone with him later, the apartment quiet except for the distant hum of city traffic, I traced the band with trembling fingers. His eyes met mine across the small space, full of that same steady intensity that hadn't done me from the start. "We can't keep hiding forever," I whispered, voice barely carrying the words, the confession hanging between us like the last breath before a storm. His hand reached for mine, stopping just short, the almost touch sending electricity skittering across my skin, and in that suspended second, I wondered how much longer we could balance on this edge before everything gave way. On the morning of our wedding, sunlight filtered through the lace curtains of the bridal suite, casting soft patterns across the floor like scattered secrets. I stood there in my white dress, fingers trembling as I adjusted the veil one last time, the delicate fabric brushing my cheeks with a whisper of what was coming. Alex slipped into the room without a sound, closing the door behind him with a quiet click that made my pulse stutter. He pulled me into that small side space away from the bustle, where the air grew thick with the woody warmth of his cologne mingling with the fresh petals in my bouquet. His breath brushed my ear as he leaned in, so close I could feel the heat of him through the silk of my gown, an inch that felt like miles of unspoken gravity. "You're marrying the man who knows every hidden corner of you," he murmured, voice low and rough with everything we'd buried. That kiss lingered just long enough to steal the air from my lungs. Not desperate, but deep, like he was sealing something sacred and dangerous all at once. In that suspended heartbeat, the full weight crashed over me. I was simply saying yes to my fiancé in front of everyone. I was binding myself to the one who had started as the forbidden pull I couldn't resist, the brother of my closest friend, the man whose touch had rewritten every rule I once clung to. My mind spun in that quiet room, torn between the joy swelling in my chest and the ache of knowing how we began. How many nights had I whispered stop while my body leaned closer? How many times had his name on my lips felt like both prayer and betrayal? Yet here we were, on the edge of forever, and the hunger that should have terrified me only made the moment sharper, sweeter in its wrongness. I forgot how to breathe as his fingers hovered near mine, not quite touching, the almost contact sending warmth radiating through the thin layers between us. Walking down the aisle moments later, my heart hammered with a storm of emotions I couldn't name. The music swelled around me, soft and steady like the rain we once listened to in his car, but inside I carried the secret like a hidden flame. Every step forward felt like choosing, not just the perfect husband the world saw, kind and steady and adored by my best friend, but the complicated truth we'd woven in shadows. The guilt lingered, sharp as ever, whispering that this love had roots in stolen time and crossed lines. Still, I said I do with a voice that didn't waver, eyes locked on his, believing our bond could hold both the light everyone celebrated and the darkness only we knew. Sometimes the one who feels most right is the one who should have stayed wrong, and in that devastating clarity, I decided to carry our hidden history into this marriage, letting it become part of the foundation instead of the fracture. Friends, on that wedding day when I realized I had married the perfect man in every beautiful and forbidden way, did I do the right thing by choosing him completely? Was it love, deep and unstoppable, or was it selfish, holding on to a craving that might one day pull everything under? The ache of that question stays with me even now, a quiet hunger that no vows can fully quiet. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Wondering if you've ever stood at a similar edge. If a secret like this has ever made your heart race with both terror and tenderness, hit like and subscribe for more raw confessions from the places we're afraid to name. Next time, I'll whisper what happened on our honeymoon when the truth almost slipped free under moonlight into many unsaid words. Yet as the celebration faded and we drove away into the evening, his hand resting warm near mine on the seat, I couldn't shake the lingering pull. The what-if hovered like distant thunder. What if the shadows we cherished began to swallow the light we promised to build? What if this perfect beginning carried the quiet promise of an ending we weren't ready to face?